We're live.
All right, so this is Senate Appropriations, and we're continuing our walkthrough of the FY24 budget as passed by the House. And we did make it down to almost the end of page 39.
We are on F on line 13. And I imagine you want to put this one on hold until you get your recommendations on the workforce and economic development.
We do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's, and I did talk to the vice chair with the target, and he said they're working very hard to get there. So it's encouraging. This is on the economic development piece, and the House had appropriated, I think, a total of 47 million. Part of it was they actually took money for a program that just barely got set up and used it to start something else. So they're going back and looking at the bill last year, S11, and see what we've created, because it's very easy to get something half started and then say, oh, let's go off and do something else. And so they're looking at what we put in place last year with S11 and moving from there. So we'll just keep going because, and I gave her a target of the 40 million because obviously we're within a budgetary construct and house.
So let's see, lines are transfers from the Clean Water Fund, the larger transfer over to the Agricultural Water Special Fund, and then the carve out for the Lake and Crisis Response Program Special Fund. And those are the same in the House and the Governor. Number 3 is the annual transportation fund to the downtown transportation and capital improvement fund. And as I'm reading that, I'm wondering if you want to think about that in the context of the cash fund. So we'll put a note on that one. And then on the top of page 40, these are the funds that are, these are what we call the direct debits, when you see them on the general fund balance sheet, the transfers into the general fund from various other funds. We have a fund that comes in, an amount that comes in related to local commitment for certified.
What does the Caledonia County Fair ever pay? I mean, that's been on for.
It's been $5,000 since I've been here.
Me too.
We should have taken care of that years ago.
So what is the five?
It was
If they're being back to us?
Yeah.
And
Are they actually paying it?
Yeah, I think
Every
so.
year
We're
they-
transferring it to the general fund.
That covers the grandstand.
That was years ago.
The new one that's on here is the sports wagering fund that's connected to the sports betting
Another
bill that's
Lone
coming
Star
through.
Grandstand?
So that the construct on sports betting is that the proceeds go into an enterprise fund, special fund, the appropriations to do the regulatory cost and the problem gambling come out of that, and then the net difference, which is what you see at $1.2 million here, is what's available to come over from that sports betting fund into the general fund.
this is anticipation.
I
Yes.
think what we ought to do with that Caledonia Fair deal is donate that to the Caledonia Fair Dick Lawrence Fund, and they could use it to do another upgrade in the building.
But this is to pay back what they owe, so if they don't pay it back,
They're gonna take the grandstand.
no, we have to underwrite the balance.
Well,
I don't know what it must be down to very nominal amount at this point. I don't know. I'm gonna suggest we move on.
They
And then
repossessed the
we're-
Walker.
the hospital and the Springfield promissory note, those, there's probably typos in those. It should be 24,047 and 121,412 should be 417. That might
So
be it.
that should be 24 instead of 29.
Well, all right, you've got that though. All right.
And the
16,
hospital is what?
121,416. So should be
Oh, big. $4.
Yeah, well, let's move on.
And then you have the larger pieces, the estimated pieces in 2 and 3, which are abandoned property, AG, we don't have Secretary of State, and then 3 are the DFR funds, $60 million at the top of page 41. And then we have in C, a one-time $15 million reversion.
Global commitment.
And then in D, we're into the reserves. And this is,
So the DFR, those are direct apps, and then we've got reversions.
and then D are sub D on line 11. This is the stabilization reserve, and it's actually lines 13 and 14. We are actually, because the spending is actually lower in 23 than it was in 22.
We don't need, the 5% is on the lower amount.
Yeah, and there's actually an updated number from the technical letter. That's a slightly lower number, 1.669311. Well, understand, but they could do a different 5% conclusion on the total appropriations after BAA.
All right.
And that might be, we'll just,
Are we agreeing with that figure?
we probably are, we haven't done the final math on it yet.
Did it come from a reputable source?
I think so. It came on this letter.
My wife.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Reserve.
So D102 is the 2753 reserve. That's the, you know, to build it up.
And we take,
Yeah,
yeah, so
and
then
when we have those events of the 27th pay period of in Medicaid.
And we just had that.
We did. We had them both in the same year in 22, I think. So D103, I don't know if you remember, but at the end of the budget, the conference committee in the budget last year, we were sort of writing this sort of ongoing carry forward money in the nursing scholarship program, and we didn't want to take the money away. We reverted it and reserved it and so now it's being unreserved and being available for the workforce piece. So that's what you see happening in D103. But we cleaned up that sort of messy, hard to follow, multiple year carry forward structure.
We cleaned it up and now we're appropriating in the workforce section.
D104 is the House statement of their priorities for any contingent funding. So if there's available money coming forward above what we're carrying forward in the statement in subsection C to use, they are stating their position of how they would prioritize those uses.
So we're gonna have to revisit this because obviously, our discussion has been, if we want to proceed with the blueprint, we fund the full 2 years.
Yeah.
The other is, Agency of Digital Services, that's 7.5, they split it up, we're appropriating the 10.
Yeah.
And we'll deal with the IT modernization proposal separately. And then the FEMA denied claims, but we're gonna redo this section.
We'll have a side-by-side of what your list is.
And I think what we're gonna be looking at is how we recognize, it's what we've done before, it's contingent appropriations. So that, I think we'll be using that same technique here, but the blueprint, as we said, if you're gonna start up a pilot, then you set it up and you do the funding for both years. You don't start it up and then next year say, oops, we don't have the money and it's wasted effort and time and so forth. And our priority is to make sure the executive branch network functions. And then the FEMA, we've been talking about them. These would be on that end of year contingency. And whatever the amount might be. They put 10, I think the administration wanted 15.
There's 5 in the building.
What?
I think there's 5 in the building.
There's 5 in the houses, they did 5 in the money, and
And
the
then,
FEMA, and then the other 10 would be here. So they were, between what they put in their one-time
It's a
list.
total of 15. They split it into places. Well, we may want to talk about the split. And then the criminal justice, moving on to page.
This would be the other 2 years of the 3-year curriculum update. Criminal justice. So I think that same principle would apply.
Yeah, if we're gonna,
It also ties into the bill that passed out of the Senate for the interrogation.
so we would like to fund all 3 years.
Yeah, to fund the whole project.
You like that, Senator Sears? Well, it seems like we've set ourselves down. We're saying we really want to overhaul the curriculum, get into that accreditation, and that's what it will take to support that project. Number 6, this is the missions repair program.
So that was $1 million item that they did over for a 5-year period. They did the first year at 200 and this year 100 for 4 years.
We talked about this in transportation, but I can't remember. They had changed it, had a hard time finding a contractor. That's
They,
people that can't get, their vehicle doesn't pass the emissions inspection, but you just need the lack of some money. So if you're a low income person and might lose your car, the lack of $400 so you can pass the emission inspection.
yeah, but you know, low income, that's the only thing. Yeah. You will be.
Yeah, if we keep spending.
You want to make a decision on that, or shall we set that aside? They put in 200.
I think this whole list will be up against a list that you.
Okay. There are certain things that we definitely are going to decide on, and the others we'll have to come back to in terms of what we want to do. All right, number 7, I think is in the whole housing arena, and that will be part of that discussion. And then number 8,
We took a haircut on the economic development piece of the brownfields, down from 10 to 8, I believe. So this would bring it back up to 2 if there was continued money available, and back up to 10.
Is this all contingencies?
This is all contingent. It's actually, it's not even, it's
Not even
intent for contingent, it's just to state the house's position on their
But we would-
priorities in
we would
relative.
use-
Yeah.
we would use the way we've approached these potential funds in the past, which would actually do a contingent appropriation. You think the money will be there and it can move forward. This just simply just sort of states priorities, doesn't obligate.
So that, we might change all of this.
You might, except for the ones that we're agreeing to, for example, the digital services. They did the 77.5, that was against the 15. We've said our priority is to get the network stabilized. And so we're going with the 10 million. So that one is definitely, the 10 million is definite. What we do over and above is yet to be determined.
Just clear that would include the judiciary. Right?
No, that does not include the judiciary.
Judiciary,
That would-
separate line.
That's a separate line. And we're still waiting for Lisa's assessment, right?
The assessment of the judiciary's,
You know.
Performing.
And what's the deadline for that report?
Soon, I think.
Yeah, she's receiving a draft, I think either yesterday or today, and we'll have more information probably at the end of the day on Friday or Monday.
In other words, the problems they've experienced with the network are the same ones being experienced, and it's the same system. So the question becomes one of creating a separate network, and that's what Lisa, based on the meeting you had with her, will advise us. So the 4 million that's for that is in here, just in a different place.
And that leads us to the E sections, which are the language that goes with the budget for the year. And E100 is always the executive branch positions. That stretches through the top of page 49.
We're already at 49.
Well, look at all the positions the executive branch wants.
And there's a
54.
Well, not all of them.
technical
The ones
corrections.
they put in, they would support. The ones that the House put in, they don't support. Shall we put it that way?
Okay, so the House is doing 54. Yeah, the governor's doing 50.
Well, I think we had testimony from these different agencies.
It's a combination.
So that's just in sub A.
Because if you look on page 49, the state's attorney positions are here, so those are the, so I think maybe the ones that, the administration supports are A and B, and then C on page 48 are the 30 new classified limited service positions, would have been added by the House.
So I think Maria Bellabos done a sheet on this that compares the governor and the House. We can, if you could ask her to send it, we'll be,
Because these are sprinkled, some, like the Human Rights Commission on
so they're
46.
different types. They're permanent
put in
versus,
governor.
Yeah.
You know,
So there's
conversion of limited
that.
services, you know, versus exempt. So we have that all laid out on a sheet. But I will remind the committee that we did the 15 positions for the tax department and the child care bill, but we did not do any positions for DCF and the child care bill.
Yeah, and
So-
and DCF has said to me that, as of tomorrow, they'll give me a list of what was needed.
I would assume you would add them here to
You
be
would have to
consistent
create
with your
them.
S56 action.
I may be wrong, but it was 6 or 7 positions that they said.
Well, because we're expanding the number of families that would be eligible, and so there are more cases, and I do believe that the governor's budget did have some positions with their own child care.
Well, if we had, I don't see it here, the judge, but if we had state attorneys, legal assistants, victim advocates, or state attorney secretary, we need to add to the defender general, at least the ad hoc increase,
No, that's 300,000.
which is 300,000.
Those aren't positions, that's just paying.
Right,
the-
that's 300 grand, and then you've got,
Category.
judicial asked for 11.
Tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
I'll make sure I get.
They just got the judge, right? And a law clerk.
I think what we'll need to do is set the positions aside for now, because we need to look at which ones were being added and for what reason. Because they're scattered depending on whether it's service or permanent, and these are all permanent. There's some limited service. So I think if we could have that list that Maria's put
That would
together,
help.
that could help us on this.
I do need, I'm gonna advocate for the 11 positions, but definitely need 5 new positions in judiciary and the law clerk and the judge if we're gonna increase. It just keeps us going.
I think the testimony from the Defender General was that if any position should be added, it needed to be with judges, because everything converges on
Right.
the court system. And so if you add it on the other end, but you still haven't increased and
Right.
dealt with the capacity of the workload for our judges, you still got that backlog.
If we do go along with adding a judge, I've got some language from Eric to make sure that they're able to serve. They can only serve 6 years before retention, and this, we appoint a new judge now, it'd be 7 years before they get retained. Some stupid reason. Judge Zoney,
Eric will probably have a,
yeah, Judge Zoney explained it to me, and then I said, talk to Eric.
and they'll craft the language.
Yeah, Eric has the language. if we have-
That was just, we didn't do it, we know.
The House didn't have the
Well,
language.
they said, they told me that they weren't authorized on when I wrote.
Believe me, I can't explain why.
No, we.
We'll make a note of it here.
But it's
No surprise.
our laws.
All right, shall we go to group insurance?
This
What
is-
is 49?
Yeah.
The positions we're gonna look at, we're gonna understand which ones were added and what's in and what's out. So,
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not against the state attorneys, what they've got here. Because, John listens to on YouTube,
or Annie does.
texting me or any or something, texting me, sure.
We haven't made any decisions on positions.
But I just want to make clear what I'm advocating for other areas. Sharing better stuff.
Well, we know with the ad hoc is definitely something that we've got to pay, and the other
Yeah, the
is,
Supreme Court made a rule that they can do that.
I know. So let's move on. I need some paper clips. Anybody got any paper clips?
Whole
I
stack
can't
of
even see where, they all, Bobby took them all.
them. No, I collect them.
Can I have
What
one
I
of those
collect
copies?
Yes, you can. You may have. All right, let's move on to page 49. We've only got 175, 49 from 175.
So 49 through 56, the group insurance, the 108 sections. These are the, I call them the Medicare Advantage related language. And what you're looking at is the statutory amendments, so the underlined or struck pieces are what will be changed. Most of that is starting on, some of it's housekeeping in terms of the organization of this.
And about page 50 is really, and this is to address the situation around the proposed Medicare Advantage plan. Has advanced that has been strongly opposed by not only our retirees, but some of us have had calls from providers that are very concerned about particular companies' practices. And so this is something that was developed between the two government operations committee with the understanding the House would put the language in relative to this proposal. And it basically says that any conversion would be subject to agreement by the Retired Teachers Association, via retired state employees, troopers, and VNCA. I don't know if that was in the Dear Jane letter or not, but anyway, that's why the language is here. All of us got many, many emails and phone calls on that. In the fact finding, this is just saying it's not such a mediation. So that goes through to the bottom of page 56.
Yes, to line 17, we're in the tax computer modernization fund, and this is codifying that fund. There's a little bit of a technical correction in the reference to the fund in the technical letter. There's also a little piece of language missing, which transitions because this fund exists and is being codified, transitions the balance of the fund into the new codified fund that we got from tax. It's pretty straightforward petition to that's been added as.
Now, let me ask Stephanie, our discussion earlier that you and I had about the transparency, is this language here?
So that's what you see in, on page 57, starting on line 5, sub B.
Okay.
So it's not tax 13.21 off the top, it's a transfer, so it's an action that the budget takes every year it's the same amount.
Just the process.
That's the process.
Same percent.
So you see the amount that's going into the fund as opposed to tax determining the,
So transparency.
Yeah.
That is obviously something that we added.
The rate needs to change a little bit.
I just wanted to point out that this changes the fund structure. At the moment, the education fund contributes to the upkeep of our state tax system. Under this language, that would no longer be the case. It would be entirely general.
That's abstracted here, and that was a decision in the House. You could apply it to both funds, It would be the pieces that basically the sales tax piece that flows through the agriculture, not the property tax.
Our point is
Yeah.
that the tax, which is the system, helps collect all taxes, including property, you know.
Or would the education fund pay their share?
Well, we need to modify the language to have that split occur, which happens right now.
I would leave it the way it is.
Well, Stephanie, do you?
So the House Ways and Means Committee, I think in particular, did like seeing the transfer line on the ed fund balance sheet necessarily. So is the best way to describe that. They prefer to see that the entirety of this funded through the general fund, and that's what the House does.
Well, all right, so
I hate seeing the general fund being used as a punching bag.
how much are we talking about?
$500 million. $1 million.
So 5.2.
So that would potentially impact the yield bill next door too, I think, a little bit, or maybe just the reserve at the end.
Other people have thoughts?
I mean, if there's a real reason to change it, I haven't heard any explanation of why it needed.
So the change in this is that it doesn't show up on the ed fund balance sheet, because it is taken off the top of the revenue of the ed fund right now in this session law structure. This codifying the fund and doing it through transfer creates a transfer line in the ed fund, and that was, I think, the
So that's,
concern
that,
expressed on the House side.
all right, that explains why they did what they did. Can we do the same thing? Get to the same place, but make it clear? How much, so that both funds are being billed based on the work associated with it? And does that compromise the transparency goal that you were
Well, that's what
talking about?
I think that's the issue, is that seeing it, I think the fund should show what we're transferring in, as opposed to to take it off the top personally, but as a fiscal person. But
We could change it to 0.1% from each fund.
I think the 0.2 should have gone up when they did the general fund piece. That's also it, because the 0.2 was the amount against both funds.
I mean, just because you don't want an actual legitimate expense to show on the ed fund sheet, I find it's hard to make that a compelling argument against transparency and a change from the allocation of the costs off from the two funds just down to the general fund.
I think administrative costs are legitimate costs for each fund when they benefit.
So the yearly argument over the community high school is not going on forever between the two bodies and the governor. But, then they do this. It's no different.
I guess if we're seeing the
Except you can't find it.
maybe we can set this aside and think of some way that we can construct to get us so that it's transparent in terms of the amount that it's going to support the IT's tax fund, modernization fund. But
I'm also looking for where the language is to actually see the transfer in the D101 section.
so it sounds to me like we may need to look at the percent. Even that might not be right, even if we agreed with this.
Yeah.
But what are our alternative, how that might be expressed so that we can fully understand the amount of money.
And we carry 3.2, right?
So committee, all right, with seeing if we can come up with a better way of expressing it, but maintaining the current allocation of
Are you doing the transfer and it's non-appropriation, but potentially wrapping it into that small admin line that's in the transportation, in the ed fund
Yeah, that would make sense.
as a use.
Yeah.
E128-1, not the proposed we eliminate.
What is that?
Wait till we get there.
In anticipation, he's just getting
You
ready.
can't read ahead or you know more than the teacher.
So, we will add that one piece of the, just the fund flow that Andrew Stein sent over that's just missing from, this transition from session law to statutory. We're at around page 58, and then we're at, page 14, line 14.
So we're just gonna rewrite that section.
Yeah.
Through, and it goes through, page 58?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in section E124, it's repealing the sunset on the executive director of racial equity and the racial equity advisory. That's what you see happening in
I
E124.
guess if we found something we created that really has really supported so much of our work, we should recognize the ongoing need. We keep adding positions to support the need. I guess it makes absolutely no sense to have this
That sunset.
cease to exist. So unless anyone on the committee sees it differently, we'll go with that. Sergeant at Arms.
Yep.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Just reflects the action of the JLMC.
Joint legislative.
I know it's a small amount, but I don't remember us funding the farmer's lake.
So this, it's not, this is not additive, it's a tax within the Sergeant Arms budget. It allows the honorarium to be, so she can use up to an amount if necessary, but it does, we're not adding anything to the budget for it. We'd be doing it within her.
10,000.
within her budget,
Budget.
within her budget.
It's just authority to pay honorarium for the farmer's night if that's a necessity. for any of the farmers.
You're opposed to allowing the flexible use of,
Haven't gotten any Bennington performers up.
No.
well, we might.
Is that 10,000 for the season or 10,000?
The total.
10,000.
Just for the 16-week session.
Was that a request? I don't remember. That was,
Well, we did it last year, I think.
Yeah.
We did, it started last year, because we, and I don't know that she did anything near $2,000.
well, we had
March.
COVID though until March, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't have any.
So this will be for next,
Remember
this is
now.
FY '24.
I
This will
know.
be for next.
I
So
know.
I don't know that we've paid anything, we can find out if she's
Oh, no.
extended much
Our
at all
point
this
is,
year.
even if we'd authorized it, it wouldn't have been a use because we were hardly here for.
But what you authorized last year is probably the payment this year for Farmer's Night right now, this session.
It's not the, but it's not the Sergeant at Arms budget, it's the General Assembly's budget.
Well, they're part of the general assembly. It says within the general assembly, so. So we're revisiting what we decided last year.
You thought it was a good idea last year.
You thought it was a good idea last year. so
I didn't see it last year.
It must have been
It was
a
hidden
reverie.
from me. I was probably,
I think you forgot you
it
were.
was during COVID. I was probably at home.
I'm gonna suggest that we concur with ourselves.
And then what about that,
The two positions.
Didn't the legislative management committee approve that?
They did.
Hey, go back.
Well, I'm just pointing out that they approved it, so there must be a need.
So we need 8 now.
I don't know what,
Why don't you discuss this with the pro temp? My concern is, the officer position, these are certified law enforcement, which are so precious. I mean, the public, so I don't, and so hiring is always a problem. So we have the author, but there is authorization to hire like security positions. already, because I raised that question, for some of the functions, like the parking lot and so forth, are there,
Have no certified.
well, and so the chief said that he already has the authorization to hire, so, this was to add the 2 positions, they be certified law enforcement.
I'll say this, that most of the time this year, there have been no police officers. They're all on the second floor. And they have their offices. I don't see them out in the hallway or the lobby or in that area.
So I don't want to spend too much more time on this.
I'll talk
Came
to
from
Bill.
legislative management, and the vote, it's on record, I did not vote. I abstained from the vote because I've always taken the position that I'm not pre-approving some expenditure in advance of coming through what the priorities are, but it was, other than my abstention, the vote was to authorize the creation of these positions.
We have police departments all over the state looking for officers. State police are looking for officers, and we're gonna take them to here. I mean, yeah, I think, so you're gonna hold that.
I'm gonna let it go forward out of respect for the position taken by legislative management. I'm just saying, if they cannot hire 2 certified law enforcement, they do have the capacity to go and hire security guards.
So why don't we put that in?
I don't think we need to. They already have the authority to do it.
Well, then we don't really need this.
This is what was agreed to, and there's funding that goes with it. So if you want to hold it to have further discussion, but I can only say that this was a decision of the Joint Legislative Management Committee. And
There's one other piece of legislative position language that's needed here as well. And that is not a new position or new money, but it is the conversion of the limited service position in HR to a permanent position.
and that's, did that get added, or we need to add it?
You would need to add it. If the farmer's night stays in, that'd be 128.2, and we'd have 128.1 be the HR position.
HR position and what,
Well, it's I already know this.
okay.
Yeah, it's a conversion, there's no additional cost. So that we'll add that conversion. Then make that 128.1, and then farmer's night is 128.2. All right, now we have, this is the language that we need in honor to make official what we had to do within 6 hours.
To set aside within the state treasury, the escrow for the, to satisfy the federal requirement in our hopefully successful bid for
Middle mile.
middle mile. I think there's actually another section that we will have to add here, and I have a draft of it for you, Roy. I did not print it out, but my understanding is that the broadband board will need authority to issue certificates of good standing to the CUPs as they go for competitive BEAD funding. And so that's an authority that they'll need, and we want to add it here as a 131.1. And next time I'll have a copy of that. Grady may have a copy. I forwarded it to him. If you want to send it to Andrea, we can take a look at it. It's very simple, straightforward. Just authority for the board to do that. To issue those to the ones that are in good standing.
And this was something the treasurer agreed to do. If it's found out at the very last minute that this was a requirement. Remember, we put in 30 million as the match for the NTIA grant. that was being applied for. It's gonna bring in about 125 million or so to support broadband rollout if the grant was approved. But you had to put in this assurances of an escrow account. So the fastest to do it within 6 hours was, and the treasurer's office agreed to do it, but this is really the language necessary to make that, position the treasurer issue to the federal agency around the cash balance. So, and we all said we would agree to that. Those of us were asked to weigh in what's the solution. So it's not something that we can negotiate. It's a commitment that we made to the treasurer. He agreed to provide that letter of assurances.
Under the budget adjustment.
No, we heard after that. We had like 6 hours notice. It was necessary.
But didn't the budget adjustments when
With
the
the
money?
30 million, yes, for this or another federal program or match. So you got the language or shall we move on?
Move on, okay. 133, we actually ended up doing this a little bit in the budget adjustment as well, specifying the amounts related to the pension admin. And there's updates and technical corrections to this section that are required, and we're actually missing a section that should be in there, 134 on the municipal piece. And it'll tie also when we get to the 500s to the teachers piece. And we saw that a bit in the treasurer's proposal when he came in to talk about his budget. So,
Okay, so section E133 needs to be rewritten.
into because we take we cover certain administrative costs of the pension out of the pension
I
funds.
know we have to appropriate it to be.
And we want to specify how much is for each piece.
But you said something's missing, so you're gonna
So
give
the
us.
municipal piece of it is missing in that we should have had a piece. This one's
Provide
used,
municipal employees, number 2.
looks like they're moving that to a new section then. Yes, that's what they're doing. We're saying that should be in its own standalone section. As opposed to here embedded.
So it's in a separate section.
And the same thing with the teachers piece, that we see that in the E514.
Oh, so rather than putting them all together. What difference is it?
So it flows with the appropriations, so the E's and B's match up. I think that's the main.
Well, we want alignment, certainly, symmetry. All right, number 139 is one thing that is near and dear to me. I think I put this in 2008. That wasn't too long ago, was it? But my question is, in light of the, what,
Oh, 5 years.
2008?
Oh, 2000. 2018.
No.
That'd be 15 years.
The one thing that we ran into last year, and we worked, and actually we put some language in, we had a hydro dam that was subject to appraisal. And the appraisal was appealed, and it was in a very small town in Franklin County. And this still limits the assistance to the plant, the hydro plants on the Connecticut River are owned by them, including there's a reservoir in Somerset.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if we need to make that a bit more expansive to allow for the, if there are any other hydro dams other than the one that we picked up, because they are very complicated to appraise. And they generally are subject to having the appraisal appealed. So I don't know whether anybody is from the tax department is listening, probably not. But I'm just wondering if we should make that a bit more expansive so that it's available, that assistance is available to any town that might be dealing with an appraisal.
It says in line 14, the department or town in defense grant list.
Regarding the reappraisals of hydro and other property.
Yeah.
And other
But
property
specific
owned
to
by,
owned
and that's why,
Is it, so
If you
does
just
that
put
not cover like
No,
Sheldon?
I don't think so. I think
If you just
hydro.
put a period after hydroelectric plants, you would allow it to be used for any.
Because what was happening is the reservoir in Somerset isn't a plant, so it was
Oh, okay.
both the plant and any
There's
other.
a dam there.
But the reservoirs, and then you have flowage rights that have no dams. It gets really complicated.
There's a dam in Searsburg, which is a town with
Oh,
And-
we did pay for Sheldon.
Because I put it in
No, I
last year.
remember last
in the
year when we
budget.
did
I'm
that.
just suggesting that if you put a period after hydroelectric plants, you cover anyone.
Well,
that has
that may be the answer, but I think that we need to recognize, because I didn't know there was one, where Sheldon
It was
It's
Sheldon.
a very
we paid
tiny
for.
plant, and then they, because they lost the appraisal, and they had an obligation to repay and, because they'd given the money to the Ed Fund, and it was really for a very small town. So, I just think that, I don't know, maybe there's another Sheldon out there that I'm not aware of. Maybe there's a dam somewhere, other place, and it was professionally appraised. It wasn't as though the local appraisers did it. But the appeal was against the town. The town did not. So that's all.
We definitely need to change it because these are no longer the owners of those plants. They were sold this year. And then, but you could also do it for other electric generation plants. You're wanting to be more expensive. That might, I don't know if it's come up in the past.
No, it hasn't come up with a plan. We could just do hydroelectric plants. I don't know. If we could send it to Rebecca Samaroff, that would be helpful to take a look at that language in light of the experience that we had with the little town of Sheldon. Yeah. But it gets really, that's why you have the, you need more than plants and
Like
other
another-
property.
Real property.
I didn't think of reservoirs there.
Well, our flowage rights.
Yeah.
Because they buy the flowage rights because when the dams are backing up, obviously it covers more land.
And then we won't speak to the owners at all. We'll just
Yeah.
hydroelectric and other real property.
Yes.
Well, hydroelectric Trains Canada should be out of it.
Well, we're taking it all out. We're taking out all that. We're not limiting it to those, because I'm not sure who the owner was of the Sheldon.
I'm not in.
Okay, we're back to pilot. Senator Sears loves pilot.
Yeah, I've got a suggestion.
No, not Montpelier again.
No, because I don't want it, so, but Senator Bushwick, he's probably gonna protect them.
Wonderful.
So he could leave.
My suggestion is that any place that takes a secure juvenile facility would be eligible for pilot, just the way correctional facilities are.
You already get it.
No, they're not.
If it's not
They
safe.
don't.
It's private owned.
It doesn't matter. The town would get pilot money for any, it's on state-owned property, I believe. That's the plan.
So that would not, so what you just said would not apply to Newbury.
No, that's private.
Well, it could be, well, it doesn't matter. I think there should be a payment. Make sure that they're paid taxes, whether they're, if they're a private nonprofit or if it's the state. Whoever hosts a facility for juveniles, it's secure. It's the same as a personal, different, well, they'll argue.
Except the town, if it's state-owned, we don't pay taxes.
But if we build a
Right,
if we
do the
build a,
private.
if
We
we
give
build,
them pilot, but if it's privately owned, we
Right, we
pay the
wouldn't do
property
it.
tax.
No, we would.
Only for state-owned property.
State-owned, yeah. If they do the temporary one in St. Albans, might be run by a private nonprofit, but it'll be on state property. So I'm assuming they wouldn't be paying property tax.
Right.
but they would be added into the calculation of pilot payments based on state buildings.
The pilot is funded from the, isn't, I mean, I don't know
No,
what the
it's got two
status of
different
the fund is.
Well,
So the pilot is funded by the by the collection of local
Right.
Plus,
option taxes.
plus
But
base.
it's not on land, it's only on the buildings. And it's, if we build a building, even if it's a temporary building, that will be added to the list and calculated as part of the payment for St. Albans.
So they get it, and they would get it automatically under the
For
current
anything that you
structure?
build, and then the land is, it's, so that's the method that Pilot uses to.
I don't care, I mean, I'm just raising the point that it's a tough thing for some communities to take.
You mean,
And if, if it's private and, they appraise the Newberry facility and they get paid taxes, then I don't want to get it done. But if it's state-owned land like St. Albans or Windsor, and we build a facility there, even though a private for-profit is in there running the program,
That would matter.
they should have Pilot. And that's all I'm suggesting that we add that to this.
But you're saying that's the current.
If we build a building, it will be that it's added to
Automatically gets
the
the
inventory of state buildings that we pay Pilot
Well,
on.
but we have a special thing here, with correctional facilities, that's what I'm getting at. Under Pilot, correctional facilities, payments and taxes, it's a little
Section
bit,
E144.
yeah.
So they're
What
just
did we do
paying
with Woodside?
Don't think we did anything.
That was state-owned land, so
Yeah,
I would
don't
assume
think
we got,
paid taxes.
So I
that
think-
we paid Pilot to
I
the
think
town.
we did pay, and then we are paying on the new facility that's been
But
built there.
don't they get extra
So,
correctional facilities?
so we pay Pilot, and then there are also contracts
Right.
within corrections that pay in addition to Pilot. I believe in Newport and in Springfield.
Oh, that was part of the negotiation.
So
So
we-
you want to do
Vince,
that?
Well, I don't know what I want to do, but I thought that at least if you had something in them, maybe it's a little more complex than I thought. But I don't want to get into those agreements that Cheryl Rivers and Vince did with their communities to get them to take a prison.
It was Edgar
And
Bay.
started to.
what I do,
Edgar Bay was the
prison in
senator.
Newport.
Um,
No, I didn't.
so they pay and
I thought it was Cheryl.
pay on the,
I know, I think Edgar was part of the negotiating. He lived in
see
there.
what that Georgia.
All right, well, we'll see.
owned
Let's
city.
see if it automatically will happen under
Yeah.
our existing structure.
Well, if the correctional facilities, you get special money,
No.
but you don't.
E144, payment
Yeah.
of correctional facilities, is that what you're on, page
Yeah.
62?
So we do pay Pilot on the correctional facilities, and then we have within the corrections budget, the separate contractual
I'm
payments.
not talking about getting into that. We just want to make sure that those communities get paid for the appraised value of the facility.
So I believe it's on the insurance value of the building, which would be depreciated.
One way to do it.
I believe that's the system that we use.
Maybe we can check to see. In other words, recognizing the host community
Yeah,
similar to the
I
correction.
think given what we've heard from Newberry, and the program may not even go there, but, given what we've heard, I think it's important to have something in here, if we can, regarding their.
Well, you've got two different things, one of which is the state-owned land and paying the Pilot on the building. On the other is when it's privately owned, which I think like 204 Depot is privately owned.
Right, but we pay tax.
And then the
Right.
construct in Newbury.
I shouldn't say we, they pay taxes.
Yeah,
I don't
so
pay
the
it.
Beckett facility in Newbury is
Would
similar to
presumably,
be
yeah,
like
based
204.
upon whatever the value of the property is.
Senator Sears indicates he has to leave at 2:30. Thought we might be taking a break. And so.
Well, that was what was online, and so I looked online and I made an appointment with her
Well,
just after to go over the gun bill.
Okay, so it doesn't matter. Our schedule is just cranking through this
Yeah, I
annual
think that's
process.
part of this.
So why don't we take our break at 2:30
Okay.
and then come back, if we can make it, how much time, a half hour, you think?
Yeah, oh, no
Or
more.
2:45, and those of us who are here, we'll just keep going through the language here. And if anything pops out, we think will be an issue, we can come back to it.
Okay, thank
So